Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So folks, you know that we've been talking a lot about the banking system. Well, here we are in an election year. About a year ago, we had some, four massive regional banks with close to $500 billion in assets that collapsed. They wiped out more than half of the reserves the FDIC had. So the money that the FDIC has, they're saying, hey, look, your deposits are insured with your bank. Don't worry, we got you covered. Well, those four regional banks wiped out more than half of what the FDIC had to insure your deposits. And so now we've also got Jerome Powell coming out saying and admitting that basically that, yes, the bank failures are going to start back up again. And there's a few reasons why. So everything is accelerating. And it makes me wonder, what's the real agenda behind this? Do they want it to accelerate? Does it tie into what's happening in the election? Is this some sort of Hail Mary from the deep state to try to create so much chaos that they can still maintain control? So today we'll be joined by Dr. Kirk Elliott, my good friend, to help us make sense of what's happening in the economy with precious metals, with the stock market, with the banks. These are all very, very important factors that will absolutely affect our way of life in the coming years. So folks, please enjoy the interview. Kirk, it's good to see you as usual. How's it going?
It's going great. It's so good to see you too.
Yeah, there's always updates. Sometimes when we first started doing weekly shows together, I thought, gosh, is there really going to be a weekly thing to focus on? But I feel like we could almost do twice a week or something. We'd still have so much content because it just seems like everything's compounding now and everything is speeding up, which, I mean, look, this is an election year. There's a lot of really significant events that are unfolding. And I think that most people would agree that this isn't just in a normal election year. And this is like, in a lot of ways, I'd say this is the time for Hail Marys from the deep state, because if the populist vote for Trump is enough to get him in and enough to overwhelm their systems and all of that, it spells a very big loss for them, right? So I think they're in desperation mode. And we, as you know, and I know, the economy and finance and everything controls it. It's like the underlying pulse of the entire world. That's why folks like Martin Armstrong can predict wars based upon just looking at financial numbers. So understanding how finance plays into what's happening this year is really important. So let's, one of the more recent interviews we talked about March 11th with the pullback of the emergency funding. We know that as we talked about, CNN saying, I think New York Community Bank, people pulled out $7 or $8 billion, like, oh, it's not a bank run. And it just seems like everything is kind of boiling and that they're trying so hard to keep it, keep the lid on, but they can only do that for so long. So what are you seeing on your end over the past week or so? What are some of the big stories that you're seeing unfolding?
There's so many. I mean, and you're right, boy. We could almost fill up a show every single day with all the economic news that's happening right now. But so the biggest story of the year financially, I think, is unfolding right underneath our nose, and it hasn't really happened yet. But that's FDIC running out of money. I think we are going to have bank failures on steroids that makes Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, First Republic, when that all happened last spring, it's going to make that look like child's play. I mean, that's really what I think. This is going to be the biggest financial story of the year. And here's the reason why. So first you look at, why do banks fail? They simply have more withdrawals than they have deposits. They run out of capital, and the investments that they have aren't growing, right? Because banks invest in the same things you and I do, right? They invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate companies, except on a larger scale because they're working with other people's money. So when their investments are coming down, more withdrawals and deposits, they're going to run out of capital. So this is why you had those 5 banks that failed back in March, April of last year. So now, do we have the same thing going on now? Yep. But why did those bank failures stop? Everyone said, "Whoa, look what the Fed did. Fed's amazing. They stopped the bank runs." They didn't fix anything though. They put a Band-Aid on it, but there's still, for sake of illustration, a big, huge gaping wound underneath the Band-Aid. They never fixed that. All they did was put a Band-Aid on it by instituting the bank temp funding program, which was stimulus money to bail out failing banks to stop the bank runs, because they know if people lose confidence in the banks, they lose confidence in the whole financial system, right? So that's what that did. But then peculiar turn of events, they expire that on March 11th. It's sunset. It's done, right? Which is what, a week and a half ago. So now what does that mean? That means banks that are going to fail, they're going to be allowed to fail and go into FDIC receivership. It's like, why in the world would they want a bank to fail during an election year? Right. So it's either one of two things as I kind of think about it. Number one, they realize they truly have kind of run out of money. They can't continue to print with the emergence of the BRICS nations taking away the petrodollar. There's no built-in demand for our currency. So any funding that they might need that's not being paid for by our tax-paying dollars, they have to print it. And they know that if they keep printing, inflation goes up, they have to keep raising rates, and that's detrimental to the economy. So either they realize they're there and they just can't simply do it, or B, they want the banks to fail. It's like, Kirk, why would they want the banks to fail? Well, because they have a different agenda. They have a central bank digital currency that takes away our ability to buy and sell with whom we want to, where we want to, when we want to, and for what, right? So that's all about people control. I don't care if you're an ultra leftist or an ultra right person, nobody would want the ability to buy or sell taken away from them. Nobody wants spyware put on their bank account. And, let's look at it this way. If Trump were the president right now, the left would be saying, I don't want him telling me what I can buy or sell. And just like people on the right are saying, I don't want Biden telling me what we can buy or sell. Doesn't matter what political persuasion you are, right? Nobody's going to want that. So therefore, if nobody wants it, how are they going to get us to adapt it peacefully and actually want it? Well, you create a crisis that's so bad, banks failing, can't feed your kids, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay your rent, you can't pay your utilities, just exhaust people with bad stuff. And then they'll say, please, government, fix it. Please fix it. And they'll say, yeah, we have a solution. It's called central bank digital currency. Here you go. It's not going to fix anything. But what did they just do? They want to instill something that's going to put complete people control on you. And then the government is acting like God in the sense of they want to be our protector and they want to be our provider. That's what God is in our lives. Well, they want that. So how do you make that happen? You cut off private capital. You cut off the banking system. So people just simply do an end run around banks and go directly to the government for their survival and money, right? So this is what I think that they want. Now, back in January of 23, before the bank crisis even started happening, I was looking back earlier this week and I saw, man, I was talking about FDIC in January of 2023 only having 1.7% of all deposits covered. Right. And I talked about that on numerous shows, but I was talking to David and Stacey Whited at Flyover Conservatives. And it's like, we did that show back in January of 23. So then
basically
what happened?
Meaning, sorry, is that, let's just say that there's $1 trillion that people have sitting in the bank. Everyone thinks that, they go to their local bank and it says FDIC insured. Everyone's seen that plaque and you think, okay, well, up to $250,000 I'm insured. But if the whole system goes down, the FDIC would have to have $1 trillion, in simpleton math to insure everything. So what you're saying is that back in January of 23, of all of the money sitting in the banking system that they were supposed to be insuring, they only had enough funds to actually pay out on what, 1.4%? Is that
1.7%?
1.7%? Okay.
Yeah. So imagine this. If one bank failed, okay, you start to whittle away at that 1.7%. If two banks fail, you keep whittling away at it. So I got to thinking, what actually happened here? We had 5 banks that failed, Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, Credit Suisse, First Republic, and Silvergate Bank, right? 5. So then what happened between March of last year when that happened and March of this year? Well, I looked. You go to the FDIC, you can look at their balance sheet, you see what their assets are. They now only have 0.74% covering all deposits, savings accounts, checking accounts, CDs in America. It's like, what? 0.74%. So those 5 bank failures whittled away more than half of their assets in 1 year. So now, if we go into bank failure mode, because they just stopped the emergency funding provision, so now banks aren't going to get that to avoid FDIC receivership. They're going to go into FDIC receivership if they start to fail. That's going to whittle away the money. Now, I was reading some articles on Yahoo Finance. There was a CEO of a big real estate company. And I'm assuming probably some commercial real estate, like building subdivisions, some big dog to be able to speak on at this level. He warns that 500 or more banks are going to fail or be consolidated over the next 2 years. 500. Okay, let's just say that he's the dumbest guy on the planet when it comes to this stuff, and only 10 banks fail, not 500. He's like so far off. Well, that's still double the amount that failed last spring. I think FDIC could go under, especially if it's 500 banks, FDIC goes out of business. But let's not take his word for it, because he's just a CEO of a real estate company. Let's go to the banker of all bankers, supposedly the smartest banker in the world. Let's go to Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, right? So what did he say this week? He said there will be bank failures caused by commercial real estate losses. It's like, wait a second. He's in charge of all the banks, right? And now he's saying, we're going to have bank failures. He's basically saying the system that they created is failing and it's going to fail. So he should be the biggest cheerleader for his system. And he said, well, commercial real estate is going to cause banks to go under. So therefore, you've got this real estate guy, the banker of all bankers, both all saying banks are going to fail. We took away more than half of FDIC's assets with the 5 regional banks that failed last year. This one is going to be bigger than that. It's going to be way more than that. And I think this is why this is the biggest story of the year, is bank failures are probably going to cause FDIC to go bankrupt. Well, now what? If you saw a bank that was failing and it hit the news, it's like Bank X is going out of business. What are you going to do what's it going to do to your brain? You're going to think, oh, my word, if that bank failed, what about my bank? I wonder if the money's safe in my bank. And this is why you start to have bank runs, is because everyone gets squirrely. They don't want their money to go away. They don't know how big the contagion is. And you start to get a run on banks. And it's like that scene on It's a Wonderful Life, right? Where they go in there and it's like, sorry, we don't have any money. It's like, what? What do you mean you don't have any money? Well, we don't have any money. We were investing your money into everything that you're investing in, and it's gone, right? We're just hoping and praying that not everybody wants their money out at the same time. That's the nature of fractional reserve banking, is they only have to keep a certain amount on hand. And during COVID, that amount was 0. Of course, you're going to have bank failures if it's 0. So then just recently with Basel III, the international banking accord that they signed, they're bumping that up to 20%. So it's like, okay, this will stop bank failures. It's like, will it? Will it? So they moved it to 20%. Let's just say you were a $1 billion bank, Seth. You're the president of a $1 billion bank, and you were used to having 0% on hand, and now you have to come up with 200 million, because 20% of $1 billion is 200 million. Where's that money going to come from? It's not growing on trees, right? So you have to somehow come up with 200 million. If you can't, you either fail, go into FDIC receivership because you're out of compliance, or you get bought out by a bigger bank. So this is what's going to start happening, is because of these mechanisms that are supposed to help banks stay afloat, they're going to kill banks. But I think this is by design, right? So at a conference I think it was last year, I was talking to RFK Jr.
Folks, perhaps you'd agree with me when I say that over the past 5 years, the mainstream healthcare system's credibility has plummeted. Alternative healthcare systems that aren't beholden to medical consensus or big pharma are on the rise. Sweetamine is time tested and proven to boost your life with better health. It's one of the leading products that helps with inflammation and daily aches and pains. Just because you get older, it doesn't mean that you have to feel old. And folks, did you know that most of the diseases that make people sick and die these days are rooted in chronic inflammation, oftentimes due to glycine deficiency? So, sweetamine is composed mainly of the amino acid glycine, the nutrient that the immune system uses to regulate inflammation. So, with once daily sweetamine, most people feel the reduction in pain after just a few days. So, I challenge you to the 12-day sweetamine challenge to fight inflammation and take control of your health today. So, folks, buy sweetamine online at sweetamine.com or call 855 GET SWEET. That's 855-438-7933. And make sure you use promo code SETH, SETH, to get a nice discount on your purchase.
And, the guy, his family is embroiled in controversy and conspiracy theories for since the beginning of time. This uncle and his dad, being mysteriously killed. And it's like, so he understands conspiracies. And he said, Kirk, what we're seeing in America right now is no longer a conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy against us. So I'm telling you, the theories of yesterday or the realities of today, when these things are spoken about, they're not hiding in the shadows. They're telling us they want to usher in central bank digital currency that has the ability to cut you off from buying or selling. They're telling us all of this. It's not a conspiracy theory. They're in plain sight telling us what's going to happen. But again, nobody would want that unless the crisis is so bad that they're willing to give up their freedoms, right? So this is where we're headed. And then yesterday, I'm watching Jerome Powell, give his FOMC, speech. And what did they do? They decided to pause interest rates again. No shocker to me, even though 6 months ago they said, we're going to lower interest rates like 6 times in 2024 because we've won the war against inflation and we can lower rates now because we've done our job. I told people back then that's not going to happen. They haven't won the war on inflation at all, right? So therefore, you can't lower interest rates if inflation is still persisting or inflation gets worse. So what are they doing? They're not raising interest rates because they know that would actually kill the economy. They're not lowering because that would make inflation more. So they're just putting it on pause. It's like, we don't know what to do at this point. Let's just pause. So now the message is changing from we're going to have 6 interest rate reductions this year to then he said maybe 2 or 3. And then they left it on the table. But, and this is a big but, core inflation is persisting. It's getting a lot. And we would be open to, possibly not having any interest rate reductions this year at all. It's like, okay, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to fix it, is what all of this tells me, which is why he's saying banks are going to fail, right? And you look at this and it's like, this is complete madness, because the system that they created is now like the dinosaurs on Jurassic Park. You create this beast, this monster for everybody to look at and go to the park and enjoy it. It's like, wow, look at these dinosaurs. And then the dinosaurs decide to escape and they start destroying their creator. This is what they've done with inflation. They can't fix the beast of their own creation. They can't fix it. It's gotten too big. It's gotten too bad. It's gotten too ugly. And it permeates every part of our lives. And now you probably let the system fail so you can usher in something new. And that something new is all about people control. Sadly, that's how I view the economy headed this year.
And it's crazy because just to put together a simple timeline, right? Was you and I have been talking about the banking system for quite some time now. So
Yeah.
the bank failures of last year, you had 5 banks. I think those banks were close to half a trillion dollars, if I remember correctly, in assets, like 500 billion or something. I think it was that. Wait, let me see. I had it here right in front of me. So the 4 regional banks, including Silicon Valley Bank, had $532 billion in assets.
Yeah.
So basically, we had these banks failed last year. They put in this emergency, safeguard. This kind of, okay, the dam is leaking, shove something in the biggest hole and hope it holds out. But there's a 1-year time limit roughly on that safeguard, which just came off. Okay, so but those 4 banks, just those 4 banks alone, took over half of the FDIC reserves, right, to bail out these banks, or not really bail out the banks, but actually to insure the funders. So I put up a picture earlier. This is Silicon Valley Bank. These are people waiting outside the bank as it's failing, hoping they can get their life savings. So when you and I have conversation and we talk about, we talk about, sorry. So when you and I have these conversations and we talk about what happens when there's a bank failure, it's like, this is what it looks like. I mean, you can't really see closely, but you zoom in on these different people. Like, these are people, they might have $500,000, they might have $10,000, whatever it is. They might have their life savings, they might have their business account, whatever it is, at that account within Silicon Valley Bank, and they're sitting there. I can't imagine the stress that they're experiencing, hoping that they can walk into that account and walk away with a check that represents the money they had in that account. I mean, it's similar to the scene from It's a Wonderful Life when everyone goes in all at once and there's that big, kind of big ruckus, and they're just like, they're all screaming like, I want my money out. And he's like, I can't pay you all. So you have basically with where the situation is at now, it's like, okay, so we had the emergency funding put in place. That just got pulled out. In the meantime, as you mentioned, they're now saying, okay, hey, you got to have 20%, not 0%. Okay. At the same time, you've got the regional banks that are being warned about. Like, so these smaller banks, you got Powell coming out, you have significant people, this real estate CEO, even Powell himself coming out admitting that this is coming. And you don't have Powell coming out, you don't have Yellen coming out and saying, hey folks, just so you know, we know that you trust the FDIC, but actually the FDIC can only cover less than 1% of all deposits. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it's like that dam that they are trying so hard, or maybe they're not trying. Maybe they're intentionally like building it up so the whole thing collapses because it's an election year. I mean, that's something that. I mean, what do you think about that idea that as we head into what I think is the most important election in the history of this country in terms of determining whether in 4 years or 3 years we're a communist country or the free United States of America? I mean, the timing of all this is just insane. I mean, it's baffling. It's all kind of compounding. It's teetering on this edge.
It is, and so it's not just here that we're having an election year. It's like 60% of the world is having an election this year. So what do people vote on when they go to the ballots? What do? They're voting to change the government, right? That's what all elections are about. They want to change the government. So this year is no different. Are we going to change, or are we going to stay down this fateful path on the road to serfdom, right? I think that we'll see, right? But I think most of America is starting to wake up to the fact of the government overreach. And this is why the battle against Trump, for example, is so extreme. Even Christine Lagarde in Europe is saying, boy, if Trump wins, dude, this is going to be really bad for the globalist movement. It's like, sweet. See, they know it. They know that people are waking up and this populist movement is waking up, and the government overreach by these globalists has gotten so extreme that it's almost like it's exposed, right? And so the manipulation is exposed, the lies have been exposed. And here's what I love about that. Just like anything in life, um, if something is hidden, it can control you. So let's just say you're a politician, you have skeletons in the closet, right? So that can always be used against you. Another politician is going to say, "Hey, I'm going to expose the skeletons in your closet unless you vote my way," right? And so you get that, um, or like, if you're a Christian or whatever, and it's like, okay, you've got this hidden sin, right? It's like, okay, once it's exposed, the one who's trying to control you no longer has power. right? If things are out in the open, there's no power. If the politician were to just go out and say, these are all my skeletons in my closet, that can never be used against him for it's out there in the open. And once, you confess your sins, for example, well then in the Christian world, that okay, the devil no longer has a grip on you because it's all up in the open. So this is what I think is happening in the political world is all of these things that have been hidden for years, they're all becoming truth is being exposed. The lies are being exposed. Truth is overriding that. Light is casting out the darkness. People are waking up to the fact of what's been happening. And this is why I think why the battle is so intense right now, because the battle is no longer in the desert. The invading army is right at the gates of the city, ready to overtake it, right? And that's why this battle is so extreme and why it's exciting to me, because truth is going to win. I fully believe that. Fully believe that light is casting out the darkness. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy road to get there, right? But I think that we're getting there. And you look at everything, the price manipulation in silver over the decades, it's now being exposed, and you're seeing massive movements in the price of gold and silver. You're seeing things being exposed politically and economically. The FDIC underinsured, and people realize I have to run for safety. Maybe I'm just going to get my money out of the bank. Well, that's what you should do, right? That would be a partial solution, not a full solution. Partial solution: get your money out of the bank. Second part of the solution, I would allocate into tangible assets like silver, because still staying in cash, well, how do you get your assets out of the bank? What are you going to do with it? Right. So you have to do something with it. I wouldn't put it in the stock market. I wouldn't put it in the bond market right now. They're overvalued, because the stock market's a function of revenue. People don't have money right now. They're not spending. Unemployment's going up. This is another lie that's being exposed from the Biden administration. Is they said earlier in the week, 275,000 jobs were created. Okay, this is great, right? But then they said, and unemployment went up to 3.9%. It's like, wait a second. How do you create 275,000 jobs and unemployment goes up? Shouldn't that be the opposite? But something's wrong with that math, right? Or is it? No, there's nothing wrong with the math. There's wrong with how they speak it and the messaging. Because in America, the way that they measure unemployment is if you've been looking for a job for so long that you got so discouraged and you stopped looking because nobody's hiring you, they take you out of the pool. They take you out. They don't even measure you anymore. It's as if they now consider you employed, because you voluntarily stopped looking for work. Does that mean you're employed? No, it means you're still unemployed. You just gave up, right? So that's how what we're seeing is those people are not working. They don't count them anymore. You add those to the number of people in unemployment, and everything that they're saying is multiplicatively worse than what they're saying. And so this is the economy that we're living in. And I like it that the more lies that they say, the more people distrust what they're saying, because their wallets are telling them this can't be true. It's not my reality. And that's where we're headed now in this election year. And hopefully people see the truth as it starts to cast out the lies.
So one question I do have for you is, because I agree with you in terms of trying to pull assets out of the banking system, but I'm sure you have a bank account. I have a bank account. I have a savings account. So, because for a lot of us, maybe you pay your mortgage through your bank. Maybe you have to, your paycheck every month from your employer comes into a bank account. So, we have to still have bank accounts. So obviously, whatever assets you can comfortably pull out and put into, whether it's cash under the pillow, hey, that's a great step. The next step is going to be assets that aren't going to be tied to any particular fiat currency like the dollar, right? Which is, tangible assets like gold, silver, ammunition, food, water,
Yeah.
land, etc. But I see one question I do see that people ask a lot, which I think would be very useful to get your advice on this, is what kind of bank would you recommend people using? right? So
Yeah.
would you say, hey, go for one of the really big banks like, say Bank of America or Chase? Would you go for a small local bank, a medium-sized bank, or say a credit union? Because if we have to have money within the banking system for just interacting in society, what is the least bad option of those particular options in your opinion?
So good question. I wouldn't do the big banks, the big five, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citi, Wells Fargo. I mean, they have so much derivatives debt. They've got tens of trillions of dollars each of derivatives debt exposure. That's not safe. I also wouldn't do a small little local one-off bank because I don't think they have enough capital to withstand a storm. Now, we're seeing regional bank failures, but all those regional bank failures that we're seeing are like coastal regional banks, where maybe commercial real estate, residential real estate is causing them to hit the skids. So, overall, I think credit unions are the safest. It's kind of a dangerous comment to make because I haven't looked at the books of every single credit union, right? None of them really, but the way that they're owned is they're owned by the members. So they're going to be a little bit more conservative in their approach, or else they'd have a mutiny on their hand if something went wrong because of the way that they're owned. And I think regional banks in the Midwest are probably pretty okay because they don't have the extremes in real estate valuations that you've seen on the coasts, right? So really, credit unions or medium-sized regional banks, but really in the flyover states, right? In the center of the country. Um, Overall, I would say that's probably good. Now, my CEO, Ashley, and I have this conversation every single day because we're a big company. We're getting millions of dollars a day coming in bank wires for people buying gold and silver. Right. So what do we do? Do we have that all in one bank? We can't. So we're finding regional banks here in Colorado and basically spreading it out between a bunch of different banks. I would encourage everybody to do the same. If you've got more than the FDIC limit in your banks, open up a second one, open up a third one, go to a credit union, do what you need to do, but don't have too much in cash. Now, we can't eliminate all cash. You just can't because we live in a cash world. We have to have an emergency fund. We have expenses. We have to live, right? But having too little in cash affects your peace of mind. Having too much in cash is counterproductive because you're not keeping up with inflation. But maybe 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash is good enough. And then I would allocate the rest into something that's strong, like silver, that's actually growing and thriving and takes advantage of the markets. It maintains your freedom, your privacy, because you're getting it out of that system into something that's tangible and real. So everybody's different, though. That's why we do free consultations so we can hear your needs, your fears, your goals, and map out a strategy for success moving forward using precious metals as a hedge against your banking assets and other assets that you might have.
That makes sense. So one thing I will say, and just as we kind of wrap up here, you and I have talked a lot about Weiss ratings. I'll put this link in the description. This is a great place. I've even looked when I've been looking for banks. This is a great place of telling you the health of the bank. Obviously, it says yes. J.P. Morgan is a B. Citibank is a B minus because they have so many assets, right? So that does give them some amount of stability. And they're not looking here at they're not analyzing how likely the bank is to impose globalist agendas, right? So let's just
Mhm.
say for folks that are on here, let's just say you want to come on here and look for just whatever community bank, right? You type in your bank name and say you're in Longview, Texas, or say you're in Lexington, Tennessee, and there's a local community bank. Well, you can see it's a D plus. So you can find your bank on here. It shows you the total deposits, shows you the net income, the capital, the assets, return on assets. So it has a whole analysis on it. So this is something I would definitely recommend for people. This has been really helpful for me. If you're to say, hey, is the local credit union safe? Well, you go find uh, your local credit union. Say you're banking with the Union Fidelity Federal Credit Union in Houston, Texas. Looks pretty healthy, right? It's a B. So that's just something I would recommend. And then finally, if folks do want to move and reallocate into precious metals, we've got a link set up, Gold with Seth. You come onto here, takes you to the website with Kirk, who I trust infinitely, for a lot of different reasons. little form here that folks can fill out to set up a free consultation, or they can give you a call 720-605-3900. And I know that you guys can walk them through any and every question. It's free. Whether they say, "Hey, what about this one retirement account I have? How can I avoid taxes doing this? Should I store it at home? Should I store any question at all about, should I buy 10-ounce bars or 1-ounce, rounds? Whatever it is, I know that your specialists are an extension of your knowledge and they will help people. So all those links are going to be in the description. Kirk, thank you again. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Any final closing comments for people as we sign off?
No, just don't operate out of fear, right? Just operate out of wisdom, sound mind. This makes sense, right? Don't fear will cause you to make a wrong decision to put your head in the sand and do nothing. But listen to what Seth and I were talking about today. That's just wisdom, right? It's wisdom to get out of something that's coming down as soon as you can, get into something that's going up as soon as you can. That's how you can maximize your return while minimizing your risk. So just take that leap of faith and give us a call and we'll walk you through it. And either you can say, yeah, that makes sense, or no, I don't want to do it. It's fine. Our goal is to help you come to a decision, whatever it is, to help you protect and preserve and start to minimize that financial anxiety that you have.
Perfect. Kirk, thank you again. I'll see you next week.
My pleasure.
Folks, how do you feel? Me, I feel great. And one of the reasons I believe I feel better is because I take Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies in a capsule. They have an amazing story how this product was developed by Dr. Douglas Howard. It's right there on their website. Balance of Nature receives over 1,000 success stories every single month. They have hundreds of thousands of customers who've purchased billions of capsules of their fruits and veggies over the past 20 years. You should check it all out on their website. Their products are gluten-free and non-GMO, and they contain no added sugars or synthetics. I think if you're looking for something to make you feel better naturally, you should definitely give Balance of Nature a try. In fact, order today. Whether you order online or call them direct, you must use the promo code SETH, that's SETH, to get this special offer of 35% off plus $10 off any additional sets, plus free shipping and the money back guarantee. So call them at 800-2468-751 and use discount code SETH, or order online at balanceofnature.com and use discount code SETH to get 35% off.